All right, I'm back in the studio, and I think I fixed the settings. Eric Krol, how you doing?
Good, and how are you?
Good. We're still figuring things out here. We're in our first week of shifting to YouTube. I still have no idea as I said, why my background is blurry. That's going to bother me. That's not the setting I was looking for. You look a little different than I remember you too, Eric. But the image fits the mood. It fits how I imagine you.
Yes, I am both happy and cranky after that episode of Dynamite.
Yeah. Well, I think we have a lot to talk about. Tell me why you are a little bit cranky.
Well, I'm cranky because of all the WWE, not current WWE, mind you, several
Yeah.
years ago, WWE tropes
Yeah.
that we've got going on, the authority figures, the scripted promos, that kind of stuff. I'm happy because of that main event. It was sort of answered all the criticisms of AEW when they do these type of tournaments or these type of matches that have been going on for years, right? They don't put the stars in there. They put the star power that they have in their own promotion, a lot of it, and some of it from other promotions as well. And it was a very exciting match.
Yeah, we'll talk about the competitors in the match in a moment, but tell me what you think about the decision to give the victory to Will Ospreay. This certainly puts in conversation the possibility of them getting rid of one of their singles titles. I made note that like during the show, almost everybody in those opening segments and matches brought a belt with them, whether it's for a promo or a match. Do you think this is going to be the crowning of Will Ospreay and it's going to be a short title reign for Swerve Strickland? And if so, how do you feel about it? And if not, what other alternatives do you think they have in terms of how they get out of the match? Will Ospreay getting, we talked about Gunther winning King of the Ring, and Nick Barbati and I on our YouTube channel here on our 12-minute hot take talked about whether that was almost too soon or if it was the right circumstances for Gunther to get a title shot at SummerSlam. And there's a lot of moving parts in terms of who he'll face, and is it the right time for him to win it? And are the array of opponents who he might beat at SummerSlam the right level of opponents for him to face? I think we're going to have a similar question here with Ospreay. Is sooner better? And is this too soon, or is it not soon enough? Some would argue that they maybe should have figured out a way to build a company around him as the lead right away. So your thoughts are?
Well, I think I was surprised that Ospreay won this match, right? He won the last Casino Gauntlet match, and that's how he ended up with the international title at the pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. And so I thought Ospreay was in the match just to add star power and some exciting moves, but he wasn't going to win, and somebody else would win. Mm-hmm. Probably somebody else who never even came out, like somebody from New Japan Pro Wrestling, like Tanahashi, right? Or somebody like that.
So. Yeah.
They didn't do that. And so I would find it hard to believe you just want Ospreay going through your roster in 3 or 4 months and you're going to put the belt on him, if for no other reason than if you're going to put the belt on Ospreay, I would think you'd do it in London at All In at the end of August when you get the huge pop and maybe you sell some more tickets with Ospreay main eventing that show. And so my guess would be they're going to Ospreay versus Swerve right away, and Ospreay's not going to win. Callis could cost Ospreay the match at Forbidden Door at the end of the month of June, and that could lead to that split up. And they finally resolve the awkwardness of Will Ospreay bring a babyface in a heel faction, and then they could do a 60-minute draw. I suppose I can't imagine they're going to do that on a pay-per-view. I mean, Double or Nothing was way too long. They can have Ospreay lose clean and set up a rematch in London by having him win the Owen Classic, right? The Owen Hart tournament.
Right. Yep.
So you've got ways to get back in. I would be shocked if they put the belt on Ospreay right away, just because they have to sell. They only have about 40,000 tickets sold in London, so I think they need to do something to sell more. And Ospreay going for the belt a second time, when you would think he'd have a bigger chance of victory in his hometown, would be the way to go.
So, do you like Ospreay going for the world title not happening for the first time when you plan to have him win it in Wembley? You laid out various scenarios and where, hey, it's in the chase, he gets screwed out of it. It motivates ticket sellers or fans to buy tickets. It motivates ticket sales, I guess. Is having him not win on his first title match, which is definitely in play here as we imagine different scenarios that can play out, better than having him in some other way earn that title match and have his first title match be a victory without shenanigans and a storyline and a chase? And that's not a loaded question. It's a genuine question for you, Eric.
I mean, I think in any hero's journey, you want to have some obstacles along the way, right? You don't want to, let's see. Is there a recent example
in my journey? I'm joking.
In recent wrestling history, is there any track record we have in any promotion in the world where the hero didn't win the first time and came back and won the second time, and it was a much bigger match? Yes, WrestleMania, Cody Rhodes. So, yep. It's not the worst thing in the world to have the chase. In fact, you can make the argument over decades of wrestling, the thing that works the best is the chase, right? The hero falling short and then regrouping. Now, as is always seems to be the case with AEW, the heroes, if he loses on June 30th, 2 months later, he will have regrouped and presumably be challenging for the belt in London. But you can't control all the factors, I guess. Oh, you can with better planning, but here we are.
Where are you with the decision between Swerve and Ospreay? It's one of the top talking points. MJF showing up on Sunday might change the dynamics a bit too in terms of where AEW should end up when it comes to their world championship. The pacing of not just the pacing, but the ultimate choice of who to kind of put up there as the to use the WWE term during the Daniel Bryan era, the face of the brand. Does MJF complicate things with his return? We'll get into him in a minute in terms of how they followed up on his return. But does that complicate things, or where are you in terms of the choice between Ospreay, Swerve, and anyone else?
I mean, I think MJF doesn't need the top title or any title to be the face of the promotion, right? Mm-hmm. He can just be the biggest star. CM Punk didn't have the title the whole time he was in AEW. A lot of that time he was injured, and he did get the title, I guess, once, and was promptly injured in a brawl backstage. But you don't. So one, MJF, you don't need the belt to be the top guy. Two, AEW has not always had their world champion be the focus of the promotion.
Right.
Hangman Page was not for a lot of his reign. Swerve certainly has not been so far. I mean, he's gotten a lot of TV time, but he's
pretty close.
Not the undisputed. Yeah.
I mean, I should say saying it's pretty close. I mean, it's AEW is often an ensemble, and it's still an ensemble, but it's not like he hasn't been featured prominently every week as champion. It's not like he's an absentee champion I think it's relatively clear to viewers he's the top guy right now, even if it's not by a wide margin.
But he's not wrestling top guys, right? Christian, an excellent heel, a good foil, but not a pay-per-view main event caliber opponent. It happened to be what they went with because they had Anarchy in the Arena to headline. And I think, to me, I have not seen any news reported on what the buy rates were for Double or Nothing.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And so I wonder if I'm going to guess they were lower than last year's Double or Nothing, right? AEW's added more pay-per-views. They just had one in St. Louis Dynasty and in April 20th, 21st, around there. And so a month later, you're asking people to pay $50 again. And so was this always the plan? Is this an audible called by Tony Khan in response to lower buy rate? I mean, that's just speculative. I don't know. Just trying to figure out why might you press that button, the Will Ospreay challenges for the title for the first time button so quickly. You want to create buzz. You want to have people buy Forbidden Door, right? I think you would think the match that ended the show tonight would create a little buzz for AEW in that they had all these guys in there and they did a lot of cool moves. And Ospreay, the big hot new star, emerged in the end. And look, we're leading off this live podcast talking about this, trying to figure out the angles, even though it just happened a few minutes ago. So I feel like I need a little bit more context and reporting to know why they press this button so quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is the match that will draw the most buys for Forbidden Door. I mean, I think putting Ospreay against Swerve I guess they could. I think if they hot shot at MJF into a shot against Swerve, I mean, they could do that. I don't think it makes storyline sense and it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways. But Ospreay is right there. I mean, Swerve and Ospreay is a match where people are looking at, when is Ospreay going to get a world title shot? Is Swerve still going to be champion when he does? Probably. Since Swerve won the title and Ospreay showed up, this has been the match that people have been talking about. And like I said, I think Swerve has been pushed well, and I think he's doing well so far, Eric, as world champion. So I think that stare down at the end of the show had a good vibe to it. I mean, Ospreay just smiling and pointing at the title as Swerve was smiling at him, not looking intimidated. In fact, having a pretty fierce, serious look. And they went nose to nose, and they're the same size. It just looks like physically a good matchup. And if they plan to keep the title on Swerve, and I'm not saying they do, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't. If they plan to keep it on him beyond All In and All Out, having him score a win over Ospreay, even a little bit tainted, if there's some shenanigans with Don Callis or whomever, that does give him a storyline boost. Obviously, a clean win gives him a bigger boost, Eric. But it says, hey, we're getting that match that everybody's talking about out of the way, so we can focus on other things with Swerve and other things with Ospreay. My thinking is, he earns a title shot, but nevertheless, if you get out of the way, Swerve Ospreay, and AEW can signal to fans, we're in the Swerve Strickland business as world champion, but we also are in the Will Ospreay business, but not quite yet as world champion. Maybe it's good to get that over with early too, not to mention popping a bigger buy rate.
Yeah, I agree. Swerve beating Ospreay at Forbidden Door would certainly boost Swerve's case. He would have beaten a top guy as opposed to Christian, or the TV challenger du jour, or TV non-title match opponent du jour. So yeah, that would be a way to boost Swerve and to not cut his title reign so short, because I imagine AEW might get a little bit of backlash from some of the fan base for setting Swerve up and then not really going with him. Yep. Really, they cutting him off so soon.
Absolutely. Yep. All right. Let's take a look at a couple comments here, and welcome to everybody, by the way, who's joining us. We see some people who are maybe people who follow AEW closer than WWE and don't realize that last Friday after SmackDown, Monday after Raw, actually Sunday night after Double or Nothing, Greg Parks and Brandon LeClaire hosted a 2-hour post show that's still available on demand if you didn't see that yet. And then Monday night after Raw, I hosted a Raw post show, and then Tuesday night, Nate Lindbergh hosted after NXT. So we are in the live YouTube streaming business now, still figuring things out. We want to work different ways of getting people interacting in the show going, but we have a lot of emails, and we'll get to those. And we also have the reader comments, which we're going to continue to scroll through. I want to let people know in the comment area, because when we get engaged in a conversation on this show, and like I said, we're still kind of figuring out how we're going to format this and what the flow will be like. It really is ideal if you have a question you for sure want us to get to email it, because the chat room is going to get busier and busier as we grow here on YouTube. And so it's best to email us, and that way I can, in an organized way, get to your question or comment before it scrolls. Or I should say your question before it scrolls off the screen. That said, we're going to incorporate reader comments as we're talking into the show, and especially kind of let you guys have in the background on the screen input on our conversation. For instance, BB said MJF had more Swerve matches by now, right? I think MJF's the most popular champion in recent history, so Swerve's getting a lot of comparisons to him. You mentioned earlier, Eric, that MJF is not doesn't need the world title to be a huge star. I want to ask you, what did you think of how his return was treated? I mean, we got highlights of the pay-per-view at the top of the show. We got in the second hour, deep into the second hour, a plug that MJF would be on Dynamite next week. Did they do enough to follow up on what I think for most people was the biggest story coming out of Double or Nothing, which is MJF swearing off basically almost everything that he had done recently in the in terms of his character last year in AEW. And I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it yet. What did you think of that promo? But also, did they do enough to follow up on that, or do you think it's good to kind of do what they did tonight, set up Osprey Swerve, and let MJF be the focus next week with a week of hype?
Well, I think it's a chicken and egg scenario. How one way they could have handled the return is to announce it and try and pop a TV rating out of it.
Right.
They could have announced it and try to pop a pay-per-view buy rate out of it. And they did neither. They just put it on the pay-per-view to, I guess, help you feel good about spending $50 2 months in a row, 3 months in a row, I guess, on AEW pay-per-views. So that was an interesting choice. Yeah. The same dynamic played out with Mercedes. Her big first TV match could have been a big deal if you maybe a bigger deal than it turned out to be if you hyped it for a week or two, right? Get people to watch. And they did not do that with her either. So I guess how they tried to play this, they gave away the big interview at the pay-per-view, the return interview. They did not show any of that interview tonight on television, right? They just showed there were no MJF quotes, sound bites from that interview. So they want you to tune in next week to hear MJF talk on Dynamite for the first time, right, since his return. Now, he's already talked on the pay-per-view, so maybe that was a way for them to try and get people to buy the pay-per-view late, because you have to see MJF's interview, right? It's peak interest, right? That's the route they chose. I probably am more of a traditionalist and maybe would have teased his return ahead of time and built a pay-per-view buy rate or a rating out of it, but they'll have their chance to get a rating next week. I think you're muted.
Thank you for noting that. Yes. Hey, Wade, I just thought this from Doom Tribe T in the chat area. Just a thought, but I thought if TK knows he's about to get the big WBD rights fee deal and it includes pay-per-view on Max, is that why they went to Swerve Osprey now rather than waiting? I would think, and I don't know the timing of any of that possibly happening. I'd have to process that, but I would think he would want a big buy rate or big viewership no matter what, whether he's on Max or whether it's on pay-per-view. I don't know that really changes the booking that much, because you're going to want to be successful in whatever you do. Money's going to be flowing in either with customers buying a pay-per-view or Max paying you rights fees for their pay TV service. So, Eric, do you think that would change anything if something like that were to come up between now and later this summer, I guess?
I guess it depends on what kind of deal Tony Khan cuts for his pay-per-view rights. Will pay-per-view be included in a TV renewal? If so, how much money does he get for that? Certainly, you would think he'd want at least enough money to offset what his pay-per-view revenue has been, which is a not insignificant part of his company, especially as he's adding pay-per-views. Now, I guess booking really good title matches for a Max pay-per-view to get more people to sign up for Max. I don't know how you prove that the 10,000 subscribers Max gained in month X was all because of AEW, right? I think that would be a little bit hard. But to the extent that you do, I guess if Tony Khan is getting paid a percentage of the new Max subscriptions that start when such a deal were to take place, then he's incentivized to put on a good match. If he is just getting a flat fee, well, if he's a nice guy, he could help and wants to help his new partner. He can put on good matches on Max, but or he could put on a 5-match show for a B-level pay-per-view like WWE does for Peacock, right? Where there's some stars, but there's also some, they're saving the bigger matches for SummerSlam or WrestleMania or the Rumble, right? So those are sort of your two models, I think. And I don't know of a model that's the first model. I guess maybe Messi in MLS, Major League Soccer, gets a percentage of new Apple TV subscriptions, but that's a specific soccer subscription that you have to add on for $13 a month. So I'm not sure if this would be a tier for AEW pay-per-views that you'd have to pay more for Max, which then it would be clear. I'm buying this Max pay-per-view tier because I want to get AEW wrestling. Then you could do a revenue split. But I guess we're in a hypothetical here, so we need to see if pay-per-views are even part of a Max deal for AEW.
Yeah. And Doom Tribe T says, but if it's guaranteed money post Forbidden Door, why not go for the biggest buy rate if Forbidden Door is the last traditional pay-per-view? And yes, that is the right response to my saying, hey, they just want to do the best they can. But I think my counter to that is just you don't want to undercut how impressed executives are with your first special by doing something that takes some of the wind out of it. And I'm not saying that a rematch, if you do book the right way, a rematch can't have actually more interest in it, not less. But I kind of stand by the notion that whether he's trying to get a lot of pay-per-view buys for multiple pay-per-views in a row or one last traditional pay-per-view before they move to Max, I still think you just want to do the best that you can in whatever format you're at to impress executives or get the most buys possible. So we'll see how that goes. Eric, just a little bit more thoughts from you on the MJF presentation Sunday, and if you think there's any twists and turns, or is MJF is that what we're going to get with him? I probably won't get the same ring jacket. Maybe we will. Maybe the tribute to 2002 Triple H will go on, as people have brought up. But where do you think we're heading with the MJF character? I know we had a question in the chat room, which is, who do you think, and I'll try to give credit to him in a second here, but who should, here it is, Jeff Pollard. Who do you think MJF's returning feud should be with?
I mean, given how they left off, Adam Cole is a logical opponent, but I don't think Adam's ready to come back and wrestle, and they sort of wrote him off either permanently or for a few months. I don't know. I mean, I think, you want, if MJF is coming back as a sort of anti-hero babyface, which seems to be how he's positioning himself.
Right.
Maybe we could nickname him, depending on if he continues with this, Triple MJF. Maybe that's his nickname. I don't know. I'll workshop it.
Workshop.
And if he's coming back that way, you need a heel who can hang with him on the mic. Which immediately Jay White comes to mind, except he just beat Jay White in November on one leg, completely sort of stalling Jay White's momentum, if he ever had any in the first place in this promotion.
From what I heard about Jay White's body language after that, and maybe some rumblings to coworkers, they got to make good with him when it comes to that. So we'll see. I don't know that hot MJF coming back and then losing to MJF again is what Jay White's looking for, but.
No, yeah, that's sort of already been burned, so I don't know. I can't, you might want, do you want him against the top guy? I mean, I always want the top guys to wrestle each other, but Tony Khan tends to, milk it a little bit more.
If MJF
like
comes
Okada,
well,
with the
how
Bucks
about
speaking for him,
Eric, how about this? MJF's got an AEW tattoo. He's pro AEW. The Elite are giving Tony Khan a hard time. MJF doesn't want to be teacher's pet with Tony Khan. He can, I think, represent AEW and go after Okada. And let's do MJF Okada out of the game. I mean, that's how you get a top guy against the top guy right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think in MJF's promo, he seemed to sort of hint at, he made a reference to some guys wear masks. Mm-hmm. So at least they're holding the door open that somehow MJF could wrestle against somebody from CMLL at Forbidden Door. I don't know that that's the way I would go. I don't know that I guess Forbidden Door gives you the crutch of not sending in, not putting MJF in against an AEW guy in his first match back, right? Presumably it's going to be at Forbidden Door. It's not going to be before then. And so you just pick somebody from New Japan, right? Yota Tsuji, a very, I guess he's a face, so you probably wouldn't want to do that. I don't know. New Japan doesn't have a ton of great top tier guys right now. They got signed by AEW for the most part. So I don't know. So I'd have to think somebody from the New Japan roster. No one's really popping to mind because they're in the middle of the junior tournament, so they're not top of mind for me.
Yeah, and I know for that format they like to do international matches, and we're not getting it with Ospreay and Swerve. BB points out that MJF should go through Undisputed. Do we want to see him against Adam? I mean, do we want to, if Adam Cole's ready to go, do we want to see that, or is that hearkening back to a bad chapter for MJF?
I mean, clearly that the way they wrote out Adam Cole at that pay-per-view, either we're never going to get that match, or he's not ready to come back and he needs a few more months, weeks, whatever to get back in the game, right? My guess would be the way they wrote him off so strongly with just, a kick to the tender region and one move, I would think that indicates he's just written off for a couple months, right? That now you could have MJF go through Wardlow and the Kingdom and Roddy. That's pretty boring, right? I mean, I guess you do that on TV week after week, like the Jericho Challenge, that kind of thing. But
right.
I don't know. That's not very compelling. And I'm guessing, truthfully, MJF probably has enough stroke to face whoever he wants and book his own programs, right?
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. All right, let's do something cool here and bring our on-site correspondent in who attended tonight's event. Let's see what graphic we want to use here to make this work. There, we'll do that. We'll do three-way. How's it going, Jonathan? Good to see you.
Hey, Wade, how's it going? Pleasure to talk to you.
You are the first on-camera on-site correspondent on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show.
Wow, I'm truly honored.
And you know what? You started. I know we saw a Lamborghini on Dynamite tonight. Okada's driving that. Looks like you got a nice vehicle. Good backdrop. Off to a classy start.
Yeah, this Chevy Malibu is really popping on screen.
It is. It's cool. I like the lines and the lighting. So sweet. So you're on with Eric Krol, and you attended tonight. So I guess one thing I want to ask, Eric, a New Japan fan, talking about how happy he was with a parade of talent coming in for the main event. How did this crowd in Inglewood react to a parade of wrestlers, some of whom are really well known to a lot of fans, but others might be less known depending on how many casual fans were in attendance tonight?
Yeah, I'd say it was predominantly smart fans.
Yeah.
I've gone to a few AEW shows at the Forum here in LA, and people know the wrestling for sure. So everybody who came out, even the CMLL folks, got really big reactions. And when Shota came out, he got a big pop as well. So I don't think there was ever a point where someone came out and the crowd was puzzled by any means. I think that the fans knew who everybody was.
And among the surprise appearances in the Casino Battle Royal, how do you rank the reactions to them? Was there anyone who got a bigger reaction than you anticipated or would have thought, and anyone maybe less than you would have thought based on the reputation?
No, not really. Mystico got a really good reaction. I guess,
That's
a little surprised by that, but I guess with all the lucha roots here in LA, it's not, I guess, all that surprising now that I think about it.
Yeah.
But he got a really good reaction. And then during the match, a lot of Mystico chants going out through the crowd as well. And he kind of came off like a big star in the match. And I know from watching him on TV previously in AEW, it hasn't always been that case.
Were you personally surprised that Ospreay won? Just because it does, we've talked about on the show, you might have heard part of the conversation, it accelerated the Swerve Ospreay match from what most of us had on our calendar expectation-wise.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was very surprised. I presumed he was going to go against either a New Japan person or a CML person at Forbidden Door, but the fact that we're getting Ospreay and Swerve this quickly, it was very surprising. I kind of have mixed feelings about it, just because that's such a great program to build to, and that's All In and Wembley written all over it. So yeah, I'm a little surprised by that. I don't know if the plan now would be MJF versus the winner. I'm not sure, but yeah, I was very, very surprised by that booking decision.
Yeah, and with MJF as a babyface, it would be weird to go Swerve Ospreay and then have the winner of that, if it is Ospreay, then face a babyface again. I'm not sure how I'd feel about that. Yeah. Speaking of MJF, were there any MJF chants or anything like that tonight? What was
definitely. I think everyone was kind of hoping he would show up coming off of Double or Nothing. But they just had a video package. I'm not sure if that was on. I imagine that was on TV, but they played it in the arena. So when that package came on, got a big reaction. And then they followed it up with a graphic saying that he's going to come back next week, and that got a nice hearty boo from the crowd because everybody wanted to see him. But it definitely felt like the elephant in the room throughout the show was just like, are we going to see MJF or not? Because they haven't really advertised anything.
And I assume I should ask you, did anything happen after Dynamite went off the air? I know you didn't leave. I assume they taped Rampage after you. They're still doing it.
They still are. Yeah, I left. It's Penta versus. I can't remember, Penta versus somebody on the first match, Rampage right now. But yeah, so I left after Diamond went off the air, and it was just a prolonged kind of stare down with Ospreay and Swerve at the end. And then Ospreay kind of got the crowd going again. They played Ospreay's music again, and everybody kind of joined in the Ospreay chants, and he kind of just was kind of getting everybody pumped up for that feud.
no physicality between them, just
No.
a stare down, and then
Right.
how did the stare down end? I mean, did they just part ways, or?
Yeah, they kind of just parted ways. I think they kind of just acknowledged each other. I'm not sure when exactly it went off the air, but they had the face-to-face stare down, and then Swerve held up the AEW title, and then Ospreay looked at the international title and looked back at Swerve, and then I think eventually Swerve just kind of did the whole like, okay, we'll see, and then he backed his way off and went out of the ring, and then Ospreay kind of did his rounds inside the ring with the crowd.
Yeah, cool. Well, actually, let's go to. I asked about MJF chants in the building. This is kind of cool. We can have our viewers ask questions of our on-site correspondents. BB says, wondering how loud the CM Punk chants were during the Elite promo. It seems small, but you never know.
No, they were loud. They were loud, and I kind of feel like that's just a headwind that the Elite's going to have to fight for a while still. It feels like every time they come out, there's definitely a vocal CM Punk contingent, but thankfully it was drowned out pretty quickly with boos. I think. Generally speaking, people are just tired of the drama. They don't want to hear CM Punk's name at an AEW show anymore.
Yeah.
But there was definitely a strong chant that started, but it got drowned out pretty quickly.
Speaking of that segment with the Elite, and Eric, I'm going to throw to you for a question in a second here. The crowd was into Okada in his car, chanting "You deserve it." Did you take that as a sign that what the Elite are doing isn't working, or this is sort of an overly smart meta crowd, so to speak, an insider crowd? And like, what was your take on that crowd reaction and what it says about the booking, and if they're playing into it or getting a different reaction than they're actually aiming for?
Yeah, it's funny. The Elite had a lot of genuine heel heat, more than I expected, if that makes sense. Like they actually
coming out at or during the whole thing.
When they came out, and Jack Perry got a really good heel reaction. Coming out as well, but I think people just love Okada. There's a lot of chants that broke out, and he was actually really funny when they were showing the car coming in. Like he would look at our side. I was sitting opposite Hardcam at ringside, and Okada would turn to us and have this like really giddy look on his face, and that was just hilarious. So it's not probably not the best way to gender heel heat, but it was very entertaining. So I think people just really like Okada a lot, and he still feels relatively fresh, so people want to cheer him. And I don't know if they've done enough to really establish him as a heel, other than some random middle fingers to the crowd here and there. But I think people just love Okada, and it's hard to get past that.
Yeah, no question about it. Eric, I'm going to throw to you for a question for Jonathan, our on-site correspondent here.
Hey, how was the Mercedes Moné reaction? It seems she came out twice. Mm-hmm. I thought I heard some boos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say it was about 65-35 pro at the beginning. She's obviously like such a big star, and she just pops live. So I think that the CEO chants, I can never tell if their chants are piped in or if the crowd genuinely wants to chant CEO. But I was kind of surprised that the crowd predominantly cheered CEO. So I think the second time she came out, obviously it was a little more tepid because the novelty wore off from seeing her the first time. But I'd say it was like a decent mix, maybe not as 50-50 as it sounded like at Double or Nothing, but a little more pro Mercedes, but definitely a mix of reactions.
Well, Eric, before you ask the next question, what do you make of? I want to get your opinion, Jonathan, on Mercedes' character. I mean, I was almost like sort of, I felt cynical in saying, in suggesting she wasn't trying to be a heel, and maybe she was obliviously still trying to be a babyface and not aware of how she was coming across, because it just felt so obvious. And then this week, it's like, I guess I was right for being skeptical. She does seem like she's trying to be a babyface still. What's your take on that, seeing it live?
That was exactly my takeaway. I kind of like that the Go Home, or was it the Go Home show, or the show, maybe the contract signing, when she kind of leaned into being a heel against Willow. I kind of like that dynamic a lot. It just seemed like a more of a natural fit. But yeah, she was just like babyface 101 in the promo tonight, like, kind of backing up Willow and saying, that was so, I can't believe that Statlander turned on you and you'll come back and beat them up, and almost like being a cheerleader for her. And then she kind of did the whole like babyface shtick, which is not really her strong suit, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm really confused. I don't know what lane she's swimming in right now.
Eric, since I didn't ask you about that before I ask your next question, Jonathan, what do you make of that?
So obviously she was a face tonight because Sky Blue is a heel, and the heel was shown to attack her. I guess I give him credit for tying up that loose end, because I just thought that was a thing we would never find out who shut the lights off and who attacked her. My guess would be maybe they were looking for Julia Hart to be the person who was in that role, but shoulder injuries like Julia has tend to be measured in months, not weeks. So at least they pivoted and went back and cleaned it up, which is a credit to to Monet and her team. I mean, my thought was, is she a tweener? Is she just, you know how Bryan Danielson can be a face or a heel in AEW depending on what they want to do that particular week? Is that what's going on here with her? I mean, we don't have enough data to show yet, but certainly that was my thought, or that was my note I took when trying to figure this out and parse it.
Yeah, it's almost like she's such a big star that they're too afraid to lean too heavily one direction or the other right now.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, she's such a naturally good heel, but I think they probably still see her as a babyface to uplift the division still. It's very strange though.
And her opponent at Forbidden Door is Stephanie Vaquer, who definitely wrestles as a heel. It should be a pretty good match. I saw Stephanie Vaquer versus Azumi. AZM would be her initials from Stardom. They wrestled on the New Japan show in Chicago in April, and it was a pretty good match. But Stephanie a heel, and so Monet spends the next month as a face, I guess.
How will we know when she turns heel? I guess you'll attack a beloved babyface, or yeah. I mean, how can you be more heelish than the materialistic stuff about money and the weird, socially awkward, self-absorbed dance and the arrogance of? I mean, she feels big time, and her outfits and her hair. I mean, she is bringing it in checking boxes in certain ways, and she can work in the ring. And I mean, on a promo, she's not great, but this was, I think, better than average for her. But you got to be you don't want to be a tweener where fans are just constantly torn how to feel about you because they either, I think people do think she's a better heel. Doom Tribe in the comments said, I can't believe they are trying to keep going face with the face role for Monet. And another person commented she's a born heel. Troy Ayala did. So I just think, to me, if you go tweener with her, I think what you're going to end up with is fans thinking they don't know what they're doing, or I'm misreading the room, and just end up kind of ambivalent and confused. Jonathan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think in large part the novelty hasn't quite worn off yet. She, at least from the live perspective, like people are very excited to see her. So she still has that kind of aura as like a fresh new toy. But I think eventually fans are gonna turn if she keeps this shtick up, because it's just uninspiring and it's very robotic and lacking like any sense of humanity. So,
yes.
So I think I think
she does seem like she seems like a video game character where you just push a button and she just goes into the dance, like the self-absorbed like dance. It doesn't feel human and natural.
Yeah, exactly. So I think eventually if she keeps this up, people will eventually turn on it, and then from there, would AEW just go with it and then turn her heel officially, or fight against it like the John Cena approach and try to keep her, the babyface in spite of that? I don't know.
Yeah. Go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
There's a central problem with Monet in AEW in that she is such a far bigger star than anybody else in that women's division. It's hard to find opponents for her that are credible. Like Sky Blue, I'm like, oh my God, this isn't the pay-per-view opponent. This has got to be a TV opponent. And thankfully, Sky was the TV opponent, and they actually had a little backstory for it. But I think that's going to continue to be a problem. You can paper over that with Forbidden Door for a month, right? Because it's just some outsider who she's going to beat. But will remain a problem at least until Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter come back. If they come back, I don't know what the deal is with Britt. And Jamie Hayter obviously was injured. And it's been a long time. It's been a year, I think, now that Hayter's been gone. I think she dropped that belt in a 2-3 minute match where she came in injured and just grin and bared the pain to go through it at Double or Nothing last year, if I'm recalling correctly. And so they got a challenge to build up credible opponents, heel or face.
Yeah, yep, they do. All right, Eric, go back. I'll go back to you for another follow-up question for Jonathan.
So this was a post pay-per-view Dynamite, and you only got 4 matches, and you got a ton of angles. Do you think the crowd minded that at all?
Yeah, it seemed the show kind of felt a little aimless, maybe for the first hour. And there wasn't like a feeling like they were actually trying to build towards anything really. Like the matches were kind of just existing. But the second hour, it kind of clicked in. And then the gauntlet match at the end, the crowd really came alive for. It was very, very entertaining. especially with those surprise guests and getting Ospreay and all that. The crowd went crazy for Ospreay, which, by the way, I mean, why is he not just 1A babyface? Like, put the rocket ship to him. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, he's just tailor made to be a top guy. But anyway.
Yeah. Because you know what, one thing, Jonathan, you can headline pay-per-views with him and sell tickets on it. I mean, that's the one question mark. You know, maybe not the only one, but the main question mark with Swerve is he the guy that you really want trying to follow everything else on the show? I mean, Swerve's really good, but Ospreay is someone you just don't want to put him in a position to have to follow.
Yeah, and just the international title just seems very beneath him, and it's confusing and kind of weird for people. And I just, you know, and Swerve, to his credit, got a great reaction tonight. He's definitely. I think he's credible in the role for sure. He's earned it. Yeah. But Ospreay is just another level. Like he comes out and just the place is just electric on a whole different level. So yeah. But I think once it seemed like the show kind of found more footing as it went along, and you know, a lot of just same like the Jericho segment was just kind of like, what are we doing here? And with Brian Keith, and nobody really cared.
We got to talk about that.
It just kind of seemed like you know, I want to feel like everything's moving towards Forbidden Door, and it just kind of felt like they're just, you know, in a holding pattern maybe for the next couple of weeks. I don't know, but it did. I will say this show definitely felt like it picked up momentum in the second hour going towards the main event.
You brought it up, so let's go ahead and talk about it, because I think it's kind of a weird genius move by Jericho. I mentioned this in my written report at PWTorch.com. The point of this current learning tree bit is to flop badly and keep smiling and waving at a disinterested audience who are rejecting everything he's doing. So he's found a sweet spot for 2024. That's exactly like what's happening. So you might as well build your gimmick around the reaction you're inevitably going to get and pretend it's on purpose. I mean, talk about what that live experience was like. Because, I mean, 40% of the way in, I was like, let's wrap this up. I mean, it felt, I mean, and I don't even I sound like I'm burying it. I'm sort of in a weird way admiring what he's doing here, but I just don't think it needed that much TV time, especially coming right out of a pay-per-view when you're trying to pivot into Forbidden Door. It felt like, let's give Chris Jericho, a legacy star, his, 10 minutes of TV time, give or take, as opposed to, does this really need to be on tonight's show, when what people really wanted was MJF or more wrestling or whatever. So Jonathan, your take on that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It is kind of like, even the name TV time with Chris Jericho, it's like a play on the fact that he just watched
totally.
time. So I think it is genius in one sense, because he clearly understands the criticism and he hears what everybody's saying. But I guess, and I'd say 30% of it was probably genuine heel heat, but a lot of it was just kind of go away heat and just laughable about like how random this is. And I don't know what you do with this character though. Can this character draw money? Can this character carry a big feud, or is it just like it's so meta and inside that it's entertaining and okay, but it's just kind of like languishes a little bit?
Yeah, Eric, what do you think?
I think to Wade's shrewd observation, I think it's a way for Jericho to retain TV time despite chants of "please retire," clap, 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 clap. I didn't like it because now in the 80s, when WWE pioneered the talk show, Adrian Adonis had his Roddy Piper's Pit, obviously. There's a rich history of that, but it's sort of played out in the year 2024. And they had the sort of cheap set, mocking, almost a mocking set almost. I don't know. It's just not for me. It's too played out bad WWE that WWE doesn't even do anymore, because they've moved on to different ways to present in the post Kevin Dunn era a little bit. So, we've got two insincere heels now in AEW, Jericho, and eventually Scorpio Sky's been doing a similar insincere promo thing on Collision for a couple weeks. But Scorpio Sky tends to do promos for a few weeks, and then he might wrestle one match, and then you never see him again.
I think they should keep that going for as long as AEW is around, Eric. They should keep that going. Scorpio Sky should do a return promo for like 2 weeks, and then he doesn't show up for 4 months, and then he has another promo talking about returning with a slight twist in his character, but maybe wrestles once, but then disappears again. They never update you. Just repeat that cycle for as long as AEW exists, as long as Sky's around.
Yeah, he can be the WWE version of Veer is coming.
Yes, exactly. Yep. I feel like Billy Jack Haynes went through that, didn't they, Eric? Didn't they have that where they hyped him? And
I feel like I saw more of him in the magazines than I did on TV.
Yeah, or even more hype videos. Yeah. Jonathan, I'll throw to you. Give me another top observation from attending tonight. We've been throwing to you for specific topics, but what's standing out to you about tonight's experience?
I one thing that did stand out is Don Callis is super over. I know people have their critiques with him and stuff, but man, when he comes out, it's like it's such a genuine earned heel heat that not a lot of wrestlers or personalities get in 2024 these days. So it's kind of refreshing to see that. And he's really good at leaning into that. He can take kind of like a mediocre segment like he had, but from a live perspective, it just really works because you're just instantly invested by all the energy around you. And people like pretty much unanimously hate this guy. So I feel like he's doing something right there. So that stood out for sure. It kind of felt like the crowd was kind of waiting for something to really get excited about for a while. Like I said, I've gone to a few shows here. I went to Full Gear here, and I've been to a couple Dynamites here. And the crowds are usually really good and really hungry and on fire for AEW, but it kind of seemed like the first hour was a little flat and people were really trying to find something to latch onto. And it wasn't really until the second hour that people started getting invested more.
Talk about the reaction for Swerve compared to Moxley. Moxley's a legacy AEW star, 5 years, obviously the top guy in WWE. And you got Swerve, who's the AEW fans' choice, but it sort of happened at a time when now MJF's back, but yet Okada and Ospreay show up, and even Mercedes to a degree. So I'm kind of curious, how did that crowd? You've been to a lot of shows in that market. How did they respond to each of them, and how was it different?
Yeah, it's funny. I really felt like the Texas Death Match with Hangman at Full Gear was really Swerve's coming out party as a top guy.
Yeah,
you can kind of feel like a star being made in that moment. So kind of seeing the reaction back then to him versus now, it feels like he belongs, no doubt about it. He had a really, really strong reaction, and people were chanting "Whose house?" Swerve's house basically the entire night. And so it's definitely earned. But Moxley's just such a star, and people just get out of their seats when his music hits, and you just feel like a palpable energy in the air. So in terms of like a hierarchy, I'd say Moxley probably the most overall like pop, from a literal sense. But people are really into Swerve, and kind of surprisingly so. I think it was, I can't remember who made this point. Maybe it was on the post pay-per-view show with Greg, but someone made the point about how it seems like Swerve gets really great reactions and then kind of okay reactions and then a great reaction and an okay reaction depending on where they go. And I know he's a West Coast guy, so he has a lot of fans here, but it's been funny to kind of track the trajectory of his reactions, and I definitely feel like he's leveled up here.
Yeah. Eric, do you have anything else you want to show them specifically?
How did the Bucks versus Christopher Daniels segment get over in the building?
Actually pretty good. I think, logic aside, by now you have an executive vice president to usurp the vice president and all that kind of nonsense.
Interim,
correction. Interim, right? We're in the weeds here with these vice president levels, like at a bank or something.
Right. So I guess that supersedes their EVP role, whatever. I don't know. But it was a little hard to hear Daniels. I think like the mics were a little low, and plus, like I was saying, like the league got pretty decent heel heat reaction, especially Jack Perry. And when they actually announced formally that he was to be the TNT champion, like the crowd did not like that at all. So that was a great move. I thought it was a great move on their part. But I think it went over pretty well on the whole. And then also on that note, this just jumped out to me. Samoa Joe got a great reaction when he came out of his segment during the Jericho segment with Hook. And that stood out to me a lot. People just love Joe, and I kind of wish they would do more with him. I know he's probably coming down obviously from the world title run, but it seems like he should be in a different spot than kind of toiling in this wasteland of the Jericho feud.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to take a look at the lay of the land for the heel depth chart right now for AEW, because you bring up Samoa Joe, you got MJF, you got Ospreay, you got Swerve. The list, I mean, Copeland being injured doesn't, kind of takes, frees up a little bit of that matchup problem. But and then if the fans are going to kind of what's the term for ironically cheer for the Bucks and Okada, maybe they won't for Jack Perry, maybe they will, especially if they think, you say CM Punk chance got
drowned out.
Drowned out. You don't want the Elite as your top heel act to represent AEW in a sort of an anti-CM Punk way that also takes away heat from Jack Perry, who's seen as that guy. So they've got some challenges in terms of having serious top level guys who can actually match up against a pretty deep babyface roster right now.
Yeah, definitely. And then one point about the actual announcement itself, I think there was a little bit of an audible groan because we have another series of tournaments or matches, and I think we're just
the
kind of
Hard tournament and the TNT tournament.
It's just a lot. And I think they announced that the first one, Jack Perry's one, was going to be on Rampage. I think they announced that in the segment. I can't recall, but so yeah. And the one thing I wanted to note is WWE does a really great job in between, during commercial breaks, of keeping the crowd engaged, whether it's like video packages of other stuff.
Yeah.
AEW is basically Justin Roberts talking to the crowd the whole time, and it's fine. He's an affable enough person, but it does seem like it kind of takes the crowd out a little bit, where it kind of takes them a while to heat back up from segment to segment a bit. And I wonder if more could be done about that, just to kind of keep more of an engagement, or maybe save some of those video packages for the commercial breaks instead of just kind of dead time.
Yeah.
So the TNT thing is not a tournament; it's a series of matches to enter a ladder match.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's not technically a tournament, but nevertheless, it's qualifying matches in order to get into a match where the title will be at stake, and that's essentially the Owen tournament too. Other than it doesn't end in a singles match.
Yeah, I much prefer that to the Bucks awarding their friend Jack Perry the title.
Oh, for sure. I mean, in a way, that's kind of genius. Let's set up fans for something that they're going to hate. So then when we deliver something they might be lukewarm to, they'll be like, well, at least it's not that other thing that the Bucks just said. Cool. Jonathan, go ahead. Anything else you want to add about your experience at the show tonight?
No, I think that's about it. It was an interesting show. I kind of couldn't help but think. I went to the post Double or Nothing show when CM Punk won the championship a couple years ago, and that was the one where the MJF infamous his pipe bomb that he did before he left for a while, and just the comparing contrasting between how hot that show was versus this show was a little bit of kind of like a statement, I think, of where the company is right now. And there's a lot of great stuff going on, I think, but there is a little bit of a lack of some chutzpah behind some of it. And it seemed like it was just kind of a funny way to track how the show itself kind of went from being a little listless and maybe a little dead to actually, coming together with that gauntlet at the end. And people were really entertained by that. So it kind of represented kind of what AEW does well and what they don't do so well currently.
Yeah. That's a good observation. Cool. Anything else, Jonathan, you wanted before we let you go?
No, that's it. I appreciate the time. It was a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Yeah, this was really fun. Appreciate you coming on and kicking off our on-site correspondent on camera segment.
Yeah,
you did a nice job.
Oh, thanks.
You did a really good job. All right. Safe
guys,
travels.
Thank you.
Take care. Talk to you soon. All right. Let's go to an email here, Eric. We'll kind of keep an eye on the comments area too. Like I said, we got a good dose of email here. JB from Detroit said, so is Mercedes supposed to be a face again now after the encounter with Sky Blue? Or are we to believe that she was a face this entire time? I'm a bit confused by the direction of Mercedes as a character. And also, was it the right move to have Mercedes' first televised match unadvertised for the show tonight? Why not advertise that match? I mean, couldn't they have gotten to where they needed to be by advertising it?
Yeah, definitely in my notes. Why not promote Mercedes' first TV match more? You did an angle, right? And so you didn't have to pay it off at the end of the show. You could have paid it off next week, right? Classic wrestling booking 101. Heel attacks babyface, or whatever Monet is in this case. Babyface for our purposes. And then you pay it off next week. Tony Khan has signed this great big match, right? And then you build up momentum for it. Did Punk ever wrestle on WWE TV before he was injured?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure if he had, that they would have built that match up for 2 or 3 weeks, right? I mean, they would not have squandered the opportunity. Now, I guess on the Khan side, not Tony Khan, on the other side, she hasn't exactly moved TV numbers so far. So I guess,
they're trying to avoid embarrassing her. Is that what you're saying? They're trying to avoid embarrassing her by just not sandbagging her first appearance a little bit.
It could be, or, they just figured, well, she has moved numbers, so nothing lost here by not promoting it and just going right with it. They were in LA. They didn't have a women's match on the show. They needed to have at least one women's match on the show. But I certainly think on balance, it would have been worth a roll of a dice to see if she could move some numbers by announcing her first match. They're paying her handsomely, I assume. So why not take the chance? What do you have to lose?
Right. No, I agree. I mean, it feels like a defeated approach to not, or just bad planning to not actually like put it on. So, I mean, Tony Khan believes in social media, and you'd think it would get some extra people tuning in. I mean, our chat room earlier was talking about the drawing power of Mercedes, and that there's people who are fans of Mercedes Moné who will tune in if they know that she's on the show. And I mean, you don't, I'm not, I think it's good to have surprises on your show. You don't want to always have everything advertised ahead of time. So there are some surprises, but I don't know. I mean, here's a comment from earlier from BB. I know Sasha Banks fans who didn't want to pay $50, but didn't know she was wrestling tonight for free. I just wonder if AEW understands her demographic in the big picture. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to that note, if they would have advertised that Mystico was on the card tonight, they might have sold 1 or 2 or 3,000 more tickets in the largely empty LA Forum. You know
what? They could have advertised him and not said what match, and people would just think, oh, it's, a Rampage match or something. And then, yeah, he shows up in the casino, or just advertise him for the casino. Why not advertise everybody in the casino battle royal? Sometimes, especially in that marketplace, they drew around 5,000 fans, give or take, tonight. They're set up for over 5,000. What did they? Yeah, they were close to 5,000 as of this morning, or I think last night. So I'm sure they likely top 5,000 tonight. But yeah, I mean, they probably could have sold some extra tickets with some overt advertising. All right, let's go to Ryan from Winnipeg. We'll go back in a moment here to more of what was it, JB? Yeah, what JB had to say. He has multiple questions, but I want to go to Ryan here from Winnipeg. I just want to send an email about tonight's Dynamite. I love AEW, but this promotion has become complete garbage. There's all the talent in the world, and nothing makes sense. Declining ticket sales, all-time low ratings, a struggle for a TV rights renewal. What is it going to take for Tony Khan to put people in place who actually know what they're doing in terms of booking and formatting a wrestling program? Nothing from Willow tonight. No live appearance from MJF. A bunch of garbage matches for no reason. This show is infuriating. I'm a hardcore wrestling fan and follow WWE, New Japan, AEW, CMML, and Triple H. So I'm part of that hardcore fan demo that you need others, that you and others claim Tony is booking to, but there's nothing keeping even my interest. Thanks and have a good night. I went to that email because it ties into what we're talking about, the frustration of being a fan of a lot of the wrestlers who were on this show, but it wasn't advertised ahead of time. And a frustration with all this talent that the booking isn't where it needs to be. And so, Eric, your kind of thoughts, it's a big picture frustration, but I think tonight I can see why somebody watching would say the problems that I see, even though I watched and I'm entertained, I'm still frustrated and there's things that need to be addressed.
So that's the beauty of criticism of AEW. There's so many different reasons people give for not liking the promotion. I think most of them probably stem from they hoped it would be better. But my reason I did not like aspects of tonight's show is that it was too much like WWE. And if I wanted to watch a WWE sports entertainment based show, I would watch 3 hours of Raw and 2 hours of SmackDown. And I don't do that for my sanity. So that I didn't like. And then you get to the main event and it's The Godfather. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in, right? I think it's you are the logic guy. You want your wrestling to make sense. Todd Martin of The Fix wants realism. What he wants it to be UWFI, I guess, from Japan in the 80s or 90s. Me, I like good action. And tonight the main event for me delivered. So I'm and recency bias. That's why I give a thumbs up on the show overall, even though I was rolling my eyes at a lot of the Jericho stuff and the Monet scripted promo and the dueling interim vice president versus executive vice president. We're in the weeds with the vice presidents.
I thought it was Adam Pearce for a second. I'm like, big coup for AEW signing Adam Pearce out from under Raw.
They both are follicularly challenged.
Yes, and they both look like middle managers. Some pushback to Ryan. Zach Barber says, well, goodbye then, Ryan. Azan says whiner. Zach also points out, by the way, that they, just in response to BB, they advertised for championship celebration. So it's not like the Mercedes that people didn't know Mercedes was going to be on the show. I mean, they said she was going to be on the show.
Sure, she's on TV every week.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So
I mean,
her match, it's her first match. I think of a star of her magnitude that it's special, and why not roll the dice? But they didn't. So on we
Zach
go.
also says a point of a gauntlet is to surprise people, and so that's a pushback to me saying advertise everyone. And I would just counter Zach. I mean, of course. I mean, it's the surprises are fun, and I just made a case for surprising fans. You don't give away everything, but if it's costing you viewers, is a surprise worth it? Especially if it's kind of might help, as Eric pointed out, some ticket sales. I think you were pretty serious there, Eric, when you were saying that could have sold some extra tickets. And you don't have to advertise him for the gauntlet. I mean, you can just advertise him for the show. I think some of the other surprises in the gauntlet are worth surprising people with because they're not draws, but they're, it's kind of fun to see them on Dynamite.
Yeah, large Latino population in Southern California that, historically supports wrestling. I think so. This is the second casino gauntlet, for if that's what they're calling it. That's what I'm calling it. And so I think if you establish it as they're not telling you who's in it, but it's a bunch of stars that come out like tonight, then it becomes potentially a legitimate drawing card, right? Oh my God. The last time they did this, Jay White and Mystico and Shota Umino came, and Leo Rush and Claudio gave everyone an airplane giant spin. And they didn't establish that the first time they did it, right? It was like Will Ospreay, Jay White, and a bunch of mid-carders who lose to upper-carders. And so they don't necessarily have the benefit of the doubt on that stipulation being a proven thing you must see every time out. Yeah. So that's the needle they're trying to thread there.
And I mean, in the end, I mean, it's not going to, it's not a big picture difference maker. I mean, by the end of the show, if they had advertised or not advertised talent, you're pointing out something that's to be gained for not advertising it ahead of time, as did Zach, which is the point is establish that as the brand of it as something where there's surprises. The Rumble had that for a while. Which legends are going to show up? What name from the past or new names going to show up? And so if you invest time in it, there's definitely a payoff. I mean, this isn't like the dumbest thing that they've ever done by any means. It's not harsh criticism. I can see the counter argument, which is just let that match be one that we establish over time is where you see some names from outside of the company vying for a chance to win whatever is at stake, in this case, a title match. All right. BB said they didn't explain Christopher Daniels is filling in for Kenny Omega. That was my first thought, is when he's interim EVP, is it filling in for the never filled spot Cody Rhodes left? Or is it an update on Kenny Omega, or an implied update, which is he's going to be gone for a while? It's not like, I mean, Kenny was called an EVP, but it's not like it was some essential role that needed to be filled. He didn't actually have an on-air role as an authority. The Bucks are the ones who established that as a on-air storyline.
Yeah, I think implied, the word interim implies that he's filling in for somebody. If you've watched the show before, you would, Kenny Omega got attacked. And I guess they sort of trumped that anyway by, I think it was Shivani who piped up with clearly Tony Khan speaking in Shivani's ear and telling him what to say. He piped up with when Christopher Daniels is out here, he is speaking the word of God. Tony Khan, right? He, so I guess it's sort of an acknowledgement.
Tony
Schiavone. Yeah, Tony Schiavone used to have that role.
Yeah, I mean, up until mid-show, he was the guy who was the vehicle, the vessel to,
Yeah, and I think you interviewed Wade. I think you interviewed Tony Schiavone years ago. But since AEW started, and Schiavone said that Tony Khan is in his headset the most. And so ever since then, I feel like whenever Schiavone says something that's not just, oh my God, it's Tony Khan using Schiavone as his spokesperson, just like Vince McMahon used to speak in the ears of his announcers. Yeah,
for sure. No, I mean, I have brought that up, I think, on the Fix and on everything also, and on the post show that I think, when we hear Tony talk and there's things Tony says and we poke fun at him for it. And those probably, aren't things Tony's feeding him. Although probably on occasion they are. I mean, I don't think, sometimes TK probably feeds Schiavone lines that Tony gets blamed for that are actually the fault of Tony Khan at times. I don't know. Anyway, let's go to our next email here. Kyle in Tinley Park, Illinois says, the first hour of the show included a belt in every single segment. I mentioned that in my report and on the show earlier. If I'm someone just watching casually, where do I even begin to understand how this all works? I'm emailing you, so of course I know how all the belts rank. But come on, AEW. They need to be more accessible to a casual fan. They shoot themselves in the foot over and over again. If we're up to you, how would you take care of the belt situation? Thanks for your coverage of, speaking of Tony Schiavone, our great sport. It's there for people more than you probably know, including myself. Have a good one, Wade. Yeah, I mean, if I thought
you unify the belts, that's the answer, right?
I know. Well, it's the short, easy answer, and absolutely, I'm trying to be a little more original than that. Now, there's not a dig at you, Eric. I mean, I was thinking about tonight's show and the hype with the Bucks saying that they were going to have an announcement about the TNT title, and I was like, is this going to be the Bucks announcing that the TNT title is going to be retired? And then if Ospreay wins, the Bucks could have run out and said, hey, there's another way to get rid of the titles. We know Tony likes lots of belts. We don't like lots of belts. We want to hold, we want the titles we hold to be as prestigious as possible. So we're going to reduce the number of them and then gather them or so, whatever. I mean, kind of run counter to Tony, but also show promotional self-awareness that maybe that isn't the best thing to have so many belts. Cause I mean, Kyle is right. To a casual fan tuning in, I mean, you got Moxley. Moxley always cuts great promos. I love his stairwell promos, but he's talking about all these places he's going to be defending this title, which Excalibur is explaining to people what IWGP is. We have an eliminator match. I know Forbidden Door is a time when you might want to amplify that belt a little bit. But I mean, we saw the New Japan Strong Women's title tonight, the FTW title. It was just one belt after another. The TNT, the International, Ospreay winning a shot at the world title. It's a lot, and it wasn't even the 6-man or tag team titles weren't really prominent. But
don't forget Okada's Continental Crown or whatever that belt he's.
Yep. The one that they built it up as this Triple Crown, and then it became a Continental belt title where one of them can be peeled off and defended and lost. It's just been a mess. So Eric, the short answer is merch, but do you think that's realistic? And are we blowing out of proportion that this is a problem? Do you think Kyle speaks for a lot of fans, or is his advice should be heeded, or do you think it's not good, but it's not that big of a deal?
I don't think it's as big of a deal as Kyle does, and probably Todd Martin of the Fix, but it is it does create friction to a barrier to entry if you're a fan who's only tunes in once a month or a few times a year. I think they have an easy path ahead of them. The Ospreay belts, international belt, could be unified with the world title at Forbidden Door, right? It would, I guess, add stakes to the match. I mean, not for me, but like in theory to a wrestling audience. Oh my God, it's for 2 belts. But I think overall, why Tony Khan's been hearing the complaints about too many belts. I think he even talked about creating a mixed tag team title belts at one of the pressers last weekend. He uses it as a booking crutch, right? I mean, a match with there are 2 ways to have matches with stakes, and one of them is every match is for a belt. Well, there's a stake there, and you don't have to write too much backstory about that. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way, and you could as Todd Martin has so eloquently said on the Fix week after week, everyone's going for 1 belt, possibly a secondary title, and the wins and losses get you closer to getting a world title shot or further away.
By the way, why is Kyle O'Reilly getting a title shot, and why does Daniel Garcia, who I liked his promo tonight, why does he have to now earn it? What did Kyle O'Reilly do to earn a title shot? Excalibur made some comment at the end when he was plugging Rampage and Collision, and I was getting prepped for the show, so I didn't quite make it up. And he said, we're doing this backwards. And I was like, is he making fun of the fact that I don't know, that with the order of earning a title shot or getting a title shot before you earn it, when he was running down some of those matches? But that aside, I mean, it's just like O'Reilly doesn't deserve a shot, and Garcia probably doesn't either, but at least Garcia is willing to work for it. But what secret does Kyle O'Reilly have?
The order of those segments were weird because they announced the Kyle O'Reilly match Saturday, and then they immediately, which, the issue with that, obviously, is that he lost his TNT title match to Copeland on Collision, and then he lost to Malachi Black the night before the pay-per-view, I think, on Collision. And so, he's
since then, Eric,
mired.
he beat KM on Collision, and he beat Jonathan Cruz on Rampage. So two low-ranked wrestlers, but he is at least since then 2-0. Before that, he did beat Rocky Romero and Lee Moriarty in matches before he lost. Yes, but
so how bookers just have a soft spot for certain promoters, have a certain soft spot for wrestlers for whatever reason. Like Tony Khan, the ones that jump out at you are Scorpio Sky, keeps bringing back, nothing ever works, and Kyle O'Reilly, who was a world-class worker at one point, but just has always been bland as a saltine, minus the salt. and so, but the issue I had was, so they announced this match, and then they immediately step in. So that should be the focus, but they immediately step on it with Daniel Garcia saying he wants to earn a title match against Ospreay for the belt. And in one of the funniest lines of the night, Garcia said he's going to climb up the rankings. I'm sorry, the what? The rankings? Exactly. Have they made an appearance in months? I just got a kick out of that. I know climb up the rankings is just a thing you would say during a promo, but it still was amusing. I was also amused by the fact that Daniel Garcia gets some minor semblance of a push every now and again. Like he's the third man on the babyface team on a Collision 6-man main event. And then, but for the most part, he is just sort of been stuck in place, trudging through mud. He described his career, which was very apt. And you feel like it didn't take a lot for him to come up with that line in his promo, because it reflects what he thinks of his push.
Yep, absolutely. All right, moving on to another email here. John from Tennessee. I really do not understand the logic of not having MJF on the first show after the pay-per-view. Your biggest star made a return after 6 months, and you don't capitalize on it by advertising him with an in-ring promo the very next show. Why wait a week? It just seems so counterproductive. And can we please get Swerve in the ring with a mic instead of in another meaningless match? By the way, before we get to MJF, because that's a bigger topic, a quick thing. What was the reason for Killswitch getting a match against Swerve, other than he's affiliated with a guy Swerve just beat, and he wanted to, I guess, revenge with a fake ponytail that everyone pointed out. And then we didn't see Christian and Nick Wayne and Mama Wayne, and I guess they got the week off, but it felt kind of weird. It did feel a little bit more random than I think it ought to have.
Well, I think you didn't have the heels out there that are in the stable because you didn't want to leave it causes problems for why are they not trying to help him? Why do they not help Killswitch prevail? You don't want to give the impression you're continuing this feud with Christian after he just lost. You know how in WWE they used to have the pay-per-views on Sunday night, and then they had nothing booked for Raw, so they just book a rematch of the title match that they just gave, you just had to pay for, I guess, or through your Peacock subscription or your pay-per-view money.
They just did that with Becky and Liv, but for other reasons, because Becky was contract.
Yeah. I didn't have this. They rarely do that these days. AEW doesn't generally do it at all, but this was sort of a coda match to. It was, your options are, I guess you could have given Christian an immediate rematch, but there really wasn't a lot in that finish that sowed doubt at the pay-per-view. Swerve was the decisive victor. I guess it was just a score settling match. Hey, you took my hair, I'm going to take your hair. I managed to get through Nick Wayne before the pay-per-view to get my revenge, but I didn't have kills. Ideally you beat Nick Wayne and you beat Killswitch before the pay-per-view to build up, but he's the champion, so he didn't really need to do that. He wasn't a babyface, getting through the heels number 2 and number 3. So I think, basically it was just so he could get his hair, get your win back. He was getting his hair back.
Yeah, as Zahn said, Strickland had unfinished business with him. It's wrong to call it a random match. Well, as Zach said, I put his comment up a minute ago, but it felt out of order. You go from a title defense against the head of the faction to an opening match without anybody at ringside for him. And as Zach says, it was a House of Dragon tie, and we got a lot of push for that with AEW. So, and they made a big deal out of, Shivani was like, oh, he's wrestling just a few days after defending his title. But I guess I would have liked a little bit more context. And I don't think I didn't see advertisement for that match either on social media.
I don't recall. My line in my notes was kill switch, more like killing time until that casino gauntlet. Am I right?
Look at that. All right. John from Tennessee's follow-up is, on a side note, I had some friends watch AEW for the first time on Sunday. They are extremely casual fans who watch maybe 2 or 3 WWE PLEs a year. Their biggest takeaway was, while the action was much faster paced, most of the guys were undersized and do not look like they train like a professional athlete compared to WWE wrestlers. Imagine if Eddie Kingston was on the show. Do those 2 factors make it more difficult for AEW to draw in more casual fans? Thanks for the great content, and everyone go VIP. So yeah, what do you have to say?
Well, if everybody's under 6 feet, right? That's why Wardlow looks like a tall guy on Dynamite. Whereas if he were in WWE, he would be average height, right? So I guess it's all a matter of perspective. I don't know that there were a lot of people who didn't have good physiques on Sunday's show. Eddie Kingston is the one that jumps out to me when I think of guys who don't look like they train. CM Punk has never been a bastion of musculature, but he's a super huge star. I guess didn't bother me so much. I would think if you were watching the AEW pay-per-view for the first time, you would ask your host, John from Tennessee, when is this thing going to end? We're at hour 6. There's not many things in life I want to do for six consecutive hours, I got to tell you.
The length of the pay-per-views, Eric. We didn't talk since the pay-per-view, but what do you think of the length of the pay-per-view for AEW? How much of a problem is that, or are you thinking, are you with Azan that people are whining about things they shouldn't whine about? It's more is better.
I have never. The AEW pay-per-views have been long. I've been to many of them live because they hit Chicago a lot. And I drove up to Minneapolis once to watch my beloved Hangman win the title from Omega. And I've never complained once.
I'm still hurt by that.
I know. I've never once complained about the length. Sunday was the first time I complained about the length. That main event just went, whatever you thought of it, certainly defied logic and realism a lot. The Wade and Todd barometers. They missed the peak by, 10, 15 minutes. I mean, it was like a Lord of the Rings movie. It just, you think it's going to end and it didn't end. Oh, wait, the flame thrower wasn't the ending. Oh, wait, the hanging derby wasn't the ending. It just, it was the first AEW pay-per-view that I ever gave a thumbs in the middle to. Between the length, primarily it was the interference in every match or the distractions in every match. It was just like, don't the agents talk to each other? Or what's worse, the agents not talking to each other, or the agents do talk to each other and all the same spots and all the matches get greenlit? I don't know. Pick your poison.
Exactly. Yeah, it is kind of pick your poison. All right. Azan in St. Louis. He's in the chat room, but he emailed too. So we want to read his email here. I've been waiting for Brian Keith to get a pushed spot on TV since he appeared at Final Battle last year. Despite all that, I didn't expect someone like Chris Jericho to use him in one of his stories. He doesn't fit the mold of guys Jericho uses. I'm still kind of waiting to figure out if this is, like Jericho genuinely thinking, I can work with this guy. He's got some skill. He deserves a little boost, a little rub. Where do you think this is headed? And what do you think about Azan's point that it doesn't seem like it fits?
It is a bit of an odd fit. I don't think I have enough data. Let it play out, and we'll see how or if it fits. Jericho has assembled. Is this his third faction that he's assembled in AEW? I think the Jericho Appreciation Society was the second one, and then the first one had MJF in it. Maybe. No, it didn't have MJF in it. He was with FTR. I don't know. This is his third one. Inner Circle, Jericho Appreciation Society, and whatever this current one is, the Learning Tree faction. And in every faction, he's always had a pin eater. And I think, what's the old poker joke? If you look around the table and you can't tell who the sucker is, it's you. That might be Brian Cage. Might be the pin eater, but I guess there's still time to add members to the group. You're possibly muted.
I'll get good at that. I like this the live comments here because if we didn't think of Inner Circle, Zach Barber was there to let us know.
A one-man fact-checking machine.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Azan says in response to the previous person watching with casual fans, Will is undersized. I mean, there's nothing about Will Ospreay where you look at him and go, he's undersized. I mean, or Swerve Strickland for that matter, even if technically they probably in a lot of WWE eras would be considered 205 Live sized wrestlers, but obviously they make exceptions. NXT did. But I mean, they're both bigger, considerably bigger than Adam Cole and probably a little taller than MJF, I think. So, I mean, it's all relative. And if I'm AEW, that's the least of my worries is a casual fan thinking they're small guys. I think having people who look fit is good. But you want to, Tony Khan talks about being a challenger brand. You want your promotion to come across as something different than WWE. And Eric, I know you would like that too. You push back on even good ideas for AEW to emulate from WWE sometimes. If you were opening a Burger King when McDonald's was in town, you'd say, no tables and chairs. McDonald's does it. We can't copy them. I mean, there's some basics you want to do well. And Mercedes, I think, is a good example of it with her outfits. I mean, it's very top shelf major league, and that's been a bit of an issue for AEW, women and men, not looking like there's a budget or a thought to the aesthetic aspect that I think a lot of fans look for. Size is not, I mean, relative size is not a thing. I mean, it's kind of like 911 and ECW and Mike Awesome in WCW or actually in ECW too. They end up looking big compared to the people they're next to, but they weren't really all that big. And so that's how I feel about Killswitch at this point. He's not a very tall guy, but when he's standing next to, Jack Perry and wrestling AEW guys, he looks like if you beat him, you're beating a giant. So it's all relative.
The guy who was the primary driver for 40 years of the size fetish in wrestling is now not involved anymore with wrestling. So, that's why Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa can show up on WWE TV without worrying they're necessarily to get buried just because they're so much shorter than the rest of the roster, right?
Exactly. Yep. And I mean, I don't think size is the size of a wrestler counts for something. I mean, I don't think like it doesn't mean anything. I mean, can be a limiting factor, but if you are surrounded by people of similar size, that's fine. I mean, that's why I think there's a danger in AEW of somebody coming in. Well, I've been critical of Billy Gunn. He's needlessly tall, and he has made Max Caster and Anthony Bowen seem small because I don't think people think of him as an especially tall wrestler, even though he's legit like 6'5" or something. He dwarfs everybody else he's with, and that's not even the biggest problem. I mean, the biggest problem is he's pinning everybody, and he's 60. So that's a whole other topic. Yeah. Okay. Azan in St. Louis also in the chat room, but emailed with another question here. Honestly, not enough fans give credit to Okada being natural and good at doing a Tully Blanchard, Ted DiBiase, rich playboy gimmick in AEW. Eric, are you enjoying Okada's interpretation and execution of this role? Do you have any critique about how he reacted to the car tonight? And were you for or against him being a heel, and has that changed? So kind of a multi-part question. Grab what on. Latch on to whatever.
Yeah, I think like our guest on-site correspondent, Okada's a natural face at this point. Well, he may not be a natural face, but fans are treating him as a face. So you're really fighting City Hall there. I think Okada's probably been working on his English because he's saying more than he did when he came in March. Right. The sports car thing, I was disappointed twice on that one. First was that, they brought us a car back, which is a very WWE 25 years ago thing. Yes. Cars on the Titantron. And then I was also disappointed because it wasn't a babyface driving the car and destroying it. And
you're not Okada going from Tony's got money. They're not going to destroy a Lamborghini on Dynamite.
Yeah. And
he's already broke from Final Countdown, apparently.
I was pulling for the car to get destroyed, and that didn't happen. So it is the Young Bucks line during the car presentation ceremony was so easy. It showed how easy it is to get crowds to chant these days. They chanted, "You deserve it." And the crowd was all in on the "You deserve it," right? Because wrestling crowds in 2024 like two things, perhaps more than anything. They like singing and they like chanting.
Yeah. And is that a problem? Is that a bad thing? I mean,
yeah, I mean, I guess it becomes the chance, especially well, they both become a little tiring after a while.
I mean, I think if you're running if you're booking well and the crowd is like, I mean, there's chance I'm against because it means you're not actually invested in the match. You're just sort of evaluating it as a critic in the crowd. This is us. I think you want people rooting for who's going to win. I mean, there's times where a match really excels, and you want to give credit to it. But if you're booking really well and there's some crowd channel-alongs that are part of the scheme, I think that's fine. But when you're in the final 3 minutes of an NBA playoff game, the crowd isn't chanting about, I mean, they'll pop for a dunk, but they're rooting for their home team to win. They're not thinking about the quality of basketball. And, pro wrestling isn't exactly that, but you don't want to get too far away from that aspect of it, which is pull people in emotionally into the back and forth, because as Todd talks about, there's high stakes. And as I talk about, the fans have a rooting interest in somebody winning and somebody losing. And you want that to be the predominant thing, not the chants. But it's still fun to go to a wrestling show and chant in the right segment, as long as it's not like a crutch or the only thing that fans are showing up for.
Seth Rollins. Sorry, had something in my throat there.
Yes.
I'm no fun. I realize I'm in the minority on this, but it's too easy. My experience may be shaped by being present for two. I was there when the Acclaimed first got over with the "Oh Scissor Me Daddy" chant at the All Out show where Punk won the title in Torch Tricep, I think. And then I was there at the All Out show last year at the United Center when the crowd did the meat chant with Miro, which I think might have possibly been his last match or one of them in AEW, and Powerhouse Hobbs. And the meat chant dueling meat chant may be an indie thing, and it's just the first time I heard of it. And in that case, in both cases, the crowd chants actually got the wrestlers over more than they probably had any right to, given the quality of the match they were putting on.
Yeah. All right. Azan also says, this had to be the worst night for Excalibur at the broadcast booth. I felt Taz did a lot of heavy lifting for this evening. Did that jump out to you? I guess he's got one more point. But did that jump out to you at all, Eric? Off night for him?
There was a time where he screwed up what video package they were throwing to, but I'm not sure that was his fault.
I don't know. I don't think that was his fault, actually. Yeah. I mean, and then at the end of the show, again, I wasn't quite sure what happened, if he screwed up the plug or someone handed him a bad script. I mean, it might not actually be him. It could be somebody else, production. And
I thought Shivani struggled, but I don't think that much of Shivani these days. But I think Shivani was struggling to spell out what the Casino Gauntlet match was, and then he latched onto some phrase and said it 3 or 4 times right in a row when he finally spat it out. I can't remember what the phrase was, and I don't have it in my notes, but sudden death was the phrase. Sudden death. Okay. It's sudden death. Yeah.
All right. Azan's final point here is AEW is finally giving Roosh a major feud with MJF. It could be something both men need to get back on track for the future. I think Roosh is not in a feud with MJF. I think he called him out and he's losing. So you can comment on that, Eric. What do you think? But also, I am wondering if we're going to see MJF wrestle more often as part of this new deal, and how you feel about the importance of that if he wants to, one, be more valuable. Because I think part of the issue with MJF going off track over the last couple of years, really, in his AEW run, is he always had to come up with material to talk about, because his sort of gimmick was not wrestling very often. If he wrestles more often, he doesn't have to talk as much, and then maybe his talking will stay more fresh and he won't have to reach.
It's an approach worth trying, although I think as long as he's not doing kangaroo kicks, which he claims he won't be doing,
I bet he doesn't.
I'd be in favor of seeing MJF wrestle more. I mean, I assumed he was following the sort of 80s Hogan Piper model, in that you only saw those guys talk on TV. If you wanted to see them wrestle, you had to pay, right? You had to pay for the house show or pay for WrestleMania, or whatever the case may be. I admit I did not. The Roosh segment, I saw him talking. What he said did not register with me. I think Roosh has some upside, ton of charisma, is worth trying. If they're gonna, I guess he's wrestled some squashes on Collision, but if you're gonna feed him to MJF in one of his first matches back, that strikes me, unfortunately, at this point, is more of a TV feud than a pay-per-view quality match for MJF. And I like Roosh, and I'm high on him.
Yeah, I'm less high on Roosh. He does a
Yeah,
lot
I know
of
the backstage. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you can overcome that with me as a performer. I mean, if you're a backstage headache and a mark for doing jobs and all that because of you were in different places and maybe that sort of self-preservation was needed, and you get to AEW and there's leadership and it doesn't matter as much, or you're around. I mean, you're around bigger stars, and so you understand doing jobs as part of the mix. And if you have the right leader, that can happen. My issue with Roosh is he just plays to the crowd too much. Like he's just at a filling 25 minutes at a house show that's not televised. I mean, he as much as people are dazzled by his athleticism, he has these bad habits that just drive me nuts. Although I'll throw Swerve under the bus a little bit for that too, because he climbed to the top rope and struck this pose with his arms in the air, and poor Kill Switch has already done the sit-up waiting for him to leap off the top rope and kick him. There needs to be cognizance about the sense of urgency to win, and that you need to cancel and override play to the crowd and doing the whole routine if it's going to make your opponent look like a complete idiot for sitting there in position for your move for an extended period of time. Granted, Kill Switch probably should have timed it differently, but if you're Swerve, you want to be aware of that. And to me, when you watch Roosh, there's always 2 or 3 times in the match where he has his opponent down and then he just decides to like go talk to the crowd for 20 seconds, and it just drives me nuts. It's like you're a performer who's playing the role of someone trying to win a fight. You're not a performer playing the role of a performer trying to get crowd heat. And so I just think he's an incredible athlete, but I just don't think AEW has the leadership to steer him in the right direction and break some of those bad habits that work when you're at a house show. I mean, I don't think you should do them at a house show either as much as he does.
I mean, I think that might be what got him over in Mexico, and he's imported that here.
Yeah, and you need leadership in AEW to say, now you're on American national cable television, and we want you to look like you're having a fight and not playing to a bunch of people in the crowd reacting to you, trying to get heat. I don't know. Yeah.
The best thing you said there was the Swerve double stomp thing. I noticed it too, and I noticed I noticed it at the pay-per-view as well. Christian, the problem with that move is the guy, in order to not break all of his ribs, has to be sort of sitting up with his muscles clenched. But the problem is when you do that, you're looking right at the guy, and he's taking forever to. Even if he didn't take forever to come off the top rope, it's like, why don't you get out of the way? You see he's coming. But to your point, Swerve milking it for 10 seconds just adds to that issue of, you had 10 seconds to recover. You're literally looking right at the guy jumping off the top rope. Why don't you roll out of the way? Maybe change your moveset, I guess, if it's going to look like that.
And I mean, obviously, the average fan is used to it. They're not paying attention to it. I mean, people pop for dives when 3 people stand and look up in the air at the guy jumping towards them instead of doing what Samoa Joe does and move out of the way. So there's a lot of dumb things, that bad habits that can be broken in pro wrestling, and you can still have a really good match. But crowds aren't conditioned to care about that. But I do think it breaks some of the immersion, and I think a more casual or discerning viewer who is watching wrestling for certain things can look at that and go, this is too dumb for me. It's too fake. And I mean, you want to clean that stuff up if you can. It's more a straighten your tie moment than a straighten your tie issue than going to just completely devastate everything you're doing. But why not straighten your tie if you're aware it's crooked? And in this case, just clean that up a little bit. It's the same way about lifting your shoulders on a save in a tag match. I mean, if your shoulders are down and the ref counts to 2 and someone jumps in and knocks the opponent off of you, lift your shoulder up so the ref doesn't stop their count even though your shoulder's still down. They're just little things. They're just obviously the right thing to do because it's better than not doing it, even if you don't think it's a big deal. And I think Roosh is like kind of full of those. But comment on this from Ryan. Says Ryan A. Rush versus MJF will be awesome. Roosh is notorious for being stiff, so I don't know how MJF would feel about him being his first opponent back after presumably being off rehabbing injuries. So an aspect of that match to watch. I mean, MJF doesn't come across like character-wise as a tough guy, but I think he can. He doesn't want to get injured, and obviously if he's still nursing an injury or whatever. But I don't look at him as someone who's brittle.
No, he just dove off of a table that had already dove off the top rope onto a table that had already broken. Yeah. He just was stupid in assessing risk, I guess, one time.
All right, Zach in Texas says, let's get the bad out of the way first. I'm over Chris Jericho. He's actually actively bad TV at this point. I know he thinks he's Brett Michaels still out there killing it with poison, but in reality, he's David Coverdale from Whitesnake who can't hit the big note on Here I Go Again anymore. He needs to take some time off because he's actively tarnishing his legacy. I enjoyed the rest of the show. Mercedes looked good in the ring again. I called the ladder match for the TNT title, just not the circumstances, though, as I do like Christopher Daniels as TK's mouthpiece. What I didn't expect was Will Ospreay winning the gauntlet match. I fully thought a New Japan guy would win because it's Forbidden Door. So Ospreay was totally unexpected. Sometimes surprises work. Did you put thought into it, Eric, who was going to win that? Like, did you have a favorite?
In which one?
The Casino Battle
Royal. I guess for me, I think they said at the start that up to 21 people could compete in this. So I was just waiting for more guys to come out. So when it ends, I'm like, oh, I don't get to see the 13 in this case, guys who were, in theory, in kayfabe, waiting in the gorilla position to come in next. I think of the guys they brought out there, Ospreay would not have been, he was a surprise to me because, I didn't think they were going to go to that match that quickly. And in theory, you needed someone, if Forbidden Door booking the last couple of years is anything, you need, New Japan would book an AEW mid-carder to challenge their top champion. And Jack Perry and Sonata last year. And then, New Japan would send someone who could lose to AEW's champion. And last year that was, I think, Tanahashi and MJF. So that's what I expected. I did expect somebody from New Japan or CMLL who could take a loss to the AEW champ, and that is not what we got at all.
No, it was not. All right, we'll go to back to JB from Detroit. We already talked about his Mercedes question. It's convenient that AEW and WBD were about to incorporate the summer premiere of House of Dragons with a match involving Kill Switch. Complete coincidence, I'm sure. In all seriousness, the announce team seemed to be pretty heavy-handed with the tie-in, which is a good sign, I suppose. Do you think they went too far with that? I think a show with as much prestige as House of Dragons and this HBO original, it actually kind of makes AEW seem kind of majorly cross-promoting it. I didn't think it bordered on too far, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, it's a synergy, and I think AEW benefits, if they were when they're promoting some D-level reality show, maybe not so much, but when you're promoting prestige television, Game of Thrones was prestige TV, and I assume the sequel is as well. I haven't seen a minute of either of them, but certainly a well-known brand name, and it's always nice to do Mr. Zaslav a favor when you are trying to squeeze him for as much money as you humanly can in these contract talks.
Absolutely. All right. JB also says, I have no problem with a well-constructed swerve, but A, AEW does too many of them, and B, it was obvious that Orange Cassidy was never going to join the Don Callis family. The fit was never realistic. Trent was always the obvious choice. The announce team acting like they were surprised about who Chris Statlander was talking about was also silly. I don't mind Trent, but I'm not sure how much he really moves the needle for the Callis family. He certainly doesn't have the ceiling that Powerhouse Hobbs does. With all that being said, they did seem to get nuclear heat from the crowd. So will Stat and Stokely have an involvement with the Callis family after tonight? We haven't spent a lot of time on that, Eric. Any thoughts on the first heel? You give the people what they want, Hug?
Yeah, I think Chris Statlander and Stokely came out solely to distract Orange Cassidy and allow Trent time to get in the ring. To me, the best part of this was on the post pay-per-view roundtable that I believe is available to your subscribers, featuring Wade and Rich Fan and Todd Martin. There was a lot of discussion on how they hate these unnecessary swerves. There you go. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. The amusing thing to me was I think you guys spent some time adding up the different swerves from the pay-per-view show, and you could add another one to that, because Trent walking out after his match and saying, I quit, I can't do this anymore, to Renee in an interview as Rocky Romero is saying, trying to console him, was great, because it was a swerve that did not pay off until Wednesday's Dynamite. So you get to add another one to your tally. I think that makes 3 or 4 unneeded swerves.
Yeah. The idea that swerves are happening at the pace that they're happening, and some are just so unnecessary. You get 5 seconds of like, oh, really? I didn't expect that to happen. Oh, now the thing I expected to happen just happened, and it's just it means nothing. Other than it's just.
I gotta say, Orange Cassidy is indestructible. A couple weeks ago, Trent pile drives him on the stairs, on the metal stairs, and he doesn't even sell it for 5 seconds. Then tonight he got beaten down, and he was still healthy enough to come wrestle in that Casino Gauntlet Battle Royal. Orange Cassidy is Wolverine from the comic books.
Was there? I mean, I don't think anybody believed Orange Cassidy was going to side with Don Callis ever. And I almost feel like, I mean, I'm glad he just tore up the contract right away. By the way, Tony Schiavone pop. I pop for Tony. He goes, at least read the dollar amount. What if it's enough to sacrifice your morals? Everybody has a price. Schiavone out there being very practical about things. But if you're Orange Cassidy, I mean, it seemed like he was genuinely entertaining Callis's offer and then decided not to. I just didn't buy it as a road worth going down, because nobody's going to believe that Orange Cassidy is going to join Don Callis, not for a second. And then the announcers kind of had to play dumb about it. I mean, they thought he wouldn't, but they didn't say to the degree you needed to, that Callis is going down a road that's not going to happen. We all know Orange isn't going to do this.
So the interesting thing to me out of this is, yes, I agree. I never once for a second believed Orange Cassidy was going to go with Don Callis. Orange Cassidy won the first 2 matches of this feud, and based on the angle they shot tonight, they have to do that. They have to run that back at least one more time, right? An Orange Trent match. Trent has to win, or what is this turn about, right? I mean, even if ultimately he ends up being the new pin eater in the Callis family in 6-man tags and tag team matches, to establish him at any kind of level, he's got to beat Orange Cassidy, which is, for storyline, they didn't do it the first 2 times because he was, on a losing streak and frustrated. He's got to win their match, whether that's on TV or at the pay-per-view.
Yeah. All right, I'll close email segment with this. Is JB still? Is Danny Garcia supposed to be a heel now after strongly calling out babyface Will Ospreay? I feel like the last time we saw Garcia, he was clearly a face. They really need to find a direction for him and give him a consistent, sustained push if they truly see anything in him. It felt kind of random. I thought he was good. I mean, I like him saying I'm in the muck, and I want to do something to break out of it. But it's part of the start-stop aspect of AEW. We're like, oh, we haven't done much with him lately. Let's give him one promo, and now he's back in a match. But I don't think wrestling. I think wrestling fans tune into pro wrestling week after week to see wrestlers go on journeys. Are they gonna? Who's going to be the next big star? But you want some consistency to it. When it's just start, stop, disappear, return, start, stop. People stop investing in those journeys. And you also want there to be something more often than not, unless there's a really good reason not to, an indication of is somebody a face or a heel. And with Garcia, I don't think calling out Ospreay makes him a heel, but it's going to make people wonder, is he being a heel? And I don't think Matt Menard's character has been fully fleshed out. He's just been a guy in commentary, not wanting Garcia to do whatever sports entertainment-y things. So there's just a lot of things where even if you're watching all the shoulder content or all the secondary shows, I still don't think you're left with a real strong emotional reaction to some of the people who come and go from Dynamite like Garcia.
Well, Garcia's role is he's part of the wrestlers who wrestle every week on Collision against whoever else is on the Collision roster. And mostly he's been, especially since the Continental Classic, he's been, a babyface who will, again, as I said earlier, he'll be the third man on the FTR team to wrestle the whatever lower mid-card heels they're going to defeat to give them a win that week ahead of whatever the important match is on Dynamite or on the pay-per-view. So got to be frustrating if you're Daniel Garcia.
They should make another belt. No, they shouldn't. Ospreay's gonna have, this is a commentary. Ospreay has a title to defend against a title shot and will be in a tournament. RYN says Rin. It is like, are you, the whole thing about there's all these belts in AEW, and when you have a belt, does it tell you if it's more prestigious or less than the other ones? If you want to go after the other one, or if you just want another one, is that just a case of no, you just want as many belts as you can? Yeah.
I mean, it's not really defined. And not only does Ospreay have a title shot against Swerve coming up now, he's got at least 2 defenses that they're building on television. Daniel Garcia, and then on this Saturday on Collision, he's got Kyle O'Reilly. So, yeah, I guess he gets to build Will Ospreay, to continue to build him for that title match in, I think we got 4 more Dynamites and 5 more Collisions, assuming it's not preempted. You're going to have him defending his belt. So there you go.
Eric, what else from Dynamite that didn't we cover that you've got something to say about?
As corny as it was, I did appreciate Matt Jackson saying, right before Adam Copeland went out, I said, "Good luck, break a leg, Adam." I liked it, as corny and predictable as it was. I mean, I think overall the show was what a post pay-per-view show should be. They did some recaps. Look at what you missed. Maybe you want to go buy that late, especially given that we've heard nothing about the buy rate. That's probably not a good thing, right? If Tony Khan had something to brag about at that post-show presser, he'd have been bragging about it, even if WrestleNomics Brandon Thurston wasn't there to ask him the obligatory, "What's the buy rate looking like?" question. You had some new programs to build for Forbidden Door. We have the top AEW match, Ospreay and Swerve is set. We've got Monet and Vakur. If it's not formally announced yet, it probably will be. They laid the seeds for that. And again, I've said what I didn't like about it. The Kevin Dunn WWE presentation stuff with the talk show, the scripted promo by Mercedes and Statlander Statlander seemed to be reading somebody else's lines, but she was smoother than she's ever been.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
She's
step
usually
forward for her.
Promo, yeah. And John Moxley can spin 5 minutes of amazing stuff about how tough he is and how he's going to bleed and you're going to drown him in the deep water off the top of his head and in his sleep, probably. Other people are emerging stars or emerging wrestlers, and they need help with the promos. And so, at least in the women's division now, there's somebody there to help. And then the Dueling Authority figures turn me off. But overall, I think there have been some in the past Dynamites after a pay-per-view that didn't really start to build anything because they had so much time before the next pay-per-view. They would just kind of throw out whatever they would throw out as filler. And this was not that. This they're on the road to Forbidden Door.
Yes, they are. There's a lot going on coming out of Double or Nothing, probably more than they could fit into one show. MJF not on the show. Perhaps he had some other obligation and, just couldn't make it too. It might not have been a decision. Somebody in the chat room pointed that out in the comments area, that maybe it just wasn't feasible and Tony Khan shouldn't be criticized for it. But it feels like a little loss of momentum when you have this big buzz generating return and then you just aren't on the show. You just have a highlight package and then Roosh, calling him out for next week. That said, you got the bump from post pay-per-view and you also got a bump a week and, another week later for MJF.
Yeah. And there's no NBA game on tonight because the Celtics swept the Pacers.
Yep.
So in theory, their numbers should be up this week.
Yeah.
I don't know what other competition there is, right?
Probably an NHL game tonight, but I'm not sure their schedule.
There is. It's Stars and Oilers. So I
can cut a little bit, but it's not going to cut a ton.
Not as much in the demo as an NBA game, right? I mean, I think WWE has seen some erosion post WrestleMania just because of NBA playoff games, right? I think it hits everybody. And so, I mean, what does that mean? To set a benchmark 750 overall is maybe the minimum you might be looking for as you try and get back up to 800 and above. Maybe maybe you're in maybe at a 0.26 in the demo as sort of minimums you might be looking for. I think they've been at 0.23, 0.24 facing the NBA competition. So, could be a bounce back week just through lack of competition.
Yeah, we're hearing some banging on your mic, on your new mic, Eric. That might be hurting people's ears. The average rating the last 8 weeks for Dynamite in the demo is 0.25. The rest of the year, if I can grab that stat quickly here. I changed my chart. Now it's harder to read. I got to fix that. Bear with me. I'll figure this out. Here we go. The average otherwise the previous 12 weeks was 0.29. So they've definitely been down in the last 6 weeks, over the course of the playoffs. So there should be a bit of a rebound viewership wise. I mean, it has been good. The 672,000 last week was that last week's number? Yeah, no, I don't have last week's number chart. So, no, I'm sorry. I was looking at a different number. So, but yeah, the viewership's been down anyway. The average in recent weeks has been more in the low sevens. So if they can get that back up, barely over 7 actually. So if they can get that back up to the mid seven, the 750 range as you mentioned, that would be a relief, I think, to them. So anyway. Eric, I got everything that I wanted to. Is if anyone in the comment area wants to sneak in a topic we missed that you were hoping we would cover, speak now or forever hold your peace.
I will say that the commenting area, a new thing for me as a podcast participant. Now I listen to podcasts with a chat room. Commenters being respectful and not being tribalistic goons toward each other. So props to the commenting to the chat room.
So 2 things. One, I think that's a reflection on our brand and a compliment on how we conduct ourselves, Eric, and you have been part of that. So I will pat ourselves on the back a little bit for that. And also you have jinxed us, and I expect everything to take a turn for the worse because you drew undue attention to something, and now people are going to want to be responsible for breaking it. So if things go haywire, it's on you.
Well, 2 things. 1, you're welcome, and 2, I won't be here next week, so it'll be your problem to deal
That's
with.
right. That's right. Yep. Honestly, we will no sell and boot people who are not keeping up the tone here. We had bigger turnout tonight than we did on Monday, and Monday we had a bigger turnout than we did on Friday for the Wade Keller post shows, and we're doing some nice numbers out of the gate. We're a little later than a lot of kind of legacy brands on the YouTube thing, but things were just going so well for us on the podcast end of things. We just didn't really get into this realm, but now with Blog Talk Radio, which was our host for the live call-in format, shutting down at an undetermined time, but somewhat soon. And as people know, the frustration with it not working, for 1 or 2 shows every couple of weeks, it was just the right time to move. And so far it's been a blast. And yes, the comment area was fun. The podcast intro and exit music that you miss is on the podcasts. So if we did not move from podcasting YouTube. We moved from you can watch us on YouTube now for free, the shows, just as you could download the podcast for free. You can still download the podcasts for free on our podcast feed. So nothing really changed on the podcast side of things other than the fact that the way we create the audio only podcasts has moved from a call-in format, audio only, to a live chat format with video. But most people, by far, still listening to us on the podcast realm, and you're invited to do so. You can subscribe to the Red feed, which features our post shows, which includes, by the way, flashback episodes. And then you can also subscribe to our Red Logo show. Search Wade Keller. Both will pop up on your search returns on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the other podcast apps, Android, iOS. And be sure to get the Blue Logo show. The flagship this week will feature Todd Martin from The Fix. It is his roughly every 3-week appearance on the flagship, where we simulcast the current events discussion from The Fix. So that is on the Blue Logo show. You are missing out if you are not subscribing to both the Red and Blue Logo shows on your podcast. There is more content on our podcast feed than we're having here on YouTube, and that will continue to be the case. So don't miss out on that. And also search PWTorch to get the free PWTorch Daily Cast feed. There's a different show every day of the week on the PWTorch lineup, and they are not moving to YouTube. Wrestling Night in America is, PWT Talks NXT was, but for the most part, the majority of the PWTorch Daily Cast will be audio only and not on YouTube. So not everything is coming over here, but certainly the post shows at this point are. Eric Krol, thank you so much. It's been great staring at you. You kept I'm fidgeting, moving around a lot, and you just stood and stayed focused the whole show, and I appreciate that. I couldn't really read your emotions visually, but I could audibly. So you did well.
I was trying to give off a Get Spider-Man vibe, right? Did I succeed?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
All right.
You know what the next step is, don't you? The next step for your YouTube page?
Inviting people over to just hang out live?
No. Well,
good.
You have a nice place. I certainly wouldn't do that. On a quiet street. Yeah. despite the random odd car that comes down and triggers your neighbors. No, you need to have your editor take some of the clips from each of your post shows and write a really inflammatory headline that completely takes it out of context in order to get more engagement, get more clicks, trick the algorithm into putting it in people's feeds. And that way you can monetize it for pennies on the dollar for each listen you do get. It's all the rage these days. Even certain other legacy wrestling sites have started to do this on their YouTube page. I won't name them, but Maeve Deltzer would be the proprietor. It's not him doing it, I don't think. I think it's the web team, but it's all the rage these days. Cut up your YouTube shows.
Yeah, it is. There's certain things about the realm you're in that sometimes you sacrifice certain things you've stuck to over the years in order to grow. But it's unfortunate that that's the way that it is. And I think as I told Nate, send me something, send me a catch, like a hook for our graphic. But I said, I don't want it clickbaity. Like, I mean, I want it to be a genuine statement about something that you guys were talking about that stood out on the show. But when he was done with the PWT Talks NXT show last night, I was like, let's not do what the other people are doing. So
has Shawn Michaels jumped the shark? ?
Yes. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us live. Thank you for watching us at youtube.com/PWTorch. I should say this more often. So we get, speaking of algorithms and all that, it really makes a difference if you are liking this episode with a thumbs up. It makes a difference to us if you are making comments after the show goes up on YouTube rather than just in the commentary during the live feed. I'm keeping an eye on that and responding to it, but just encouraging words and response to things we say, especially because more people are listening on delay than watching us live anyway. So to all of you, if you made it this far to the end, please take a moment to just in the comments area, leave a comment. YouTube really does factor that in terms of user engagement. And the other thing is subscribe to our channel. That helps us too. So those are all things you can do. And then subscribe to our podcast and hit refresh every day because there's stuff there that's not here. And that makes a big difference for us too. We are running a business, and the more downloads we get and the more people listening and subscribing, the more it helps us across the board. So search Wade Keller and PWTorch and subscribe, even if you're going to be listening to most or watching us on YouTube a lot of the time. We are there for you when you're in an audio only mood on your podcast apps. So be sure to do that also, not just instead. Eric, once again, thank you. Thanks to everybody. And I'll be by Friday night. In the meantime, speaking of our podcast, the flagship will be audio only on our podcast feed on the Blue Logo Show. So search Wade Keller. That's WadeKeller, and subscribe to the Red Logo Show and the Blue Logo Show that is not on YouTube. And you'll hear Todd Martin and his insights on the week in wrestling. And Eric, I know you'll be doing that.
For sure.
Your mic sounded great. I assume this is your new mic you actually got set up.
I did. I had some technical assistance from a Generation Z, a Zoomer. Yeah, he's 21 now, but for sure.
Yeah,
hooking up the headphones through the Bluetooth was the challenge. I figured out the microphone pretty easily.
Hey, I had things go way smoother than I thought Friday and Monday, and then I had the audio coming through my monitor speaker, and I had the wrong. I mean, the beginning of the show was a mess, but that's my teenage son says that's part of the charm of being live, and even the big YouTube legacy people with 1 billion followers. That's part of the charm of doing a live stream. So I don't feel as bad about it, but hopefully I don't just repeat it over and over again.
My guess is people are just so thankful you finally are on YouTube doing these live that they'll cut you some slack.
Yes, well, if they want to be really grateful, go VIP. That's how you can really support us, and you'll get a lot in return for your membership. Patreon, through your Apple account, or through the main sign up page through credit card, debit card, or PayPal. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Lots of exclusive content, tons of archives, exclusive articles. It's worth checking out. You can look at all the details and all the ways to sign up and support us that way at PWTorch.com/GoVIP. We've also got that graphic on the screen for our YouTube users. All right. I will really end our show there. Thank you, Eric. And we'll talk to you all once again on Friday if you are also a SmackDown fan and have your Friday night after SmackDown open to join us live. Or thank you to, again, everybody watching us on delay on YouTube. And again, take a moment to leave a comment and like this show and subscribe.